There's no such thing as independence today in the world. We're all too closely united. The old days of splendid isolation and national defence have gone.
Lord Attlee, what do you think is the most important thing that you've achieved in public life?
Well, opinions are on that, you know. Some say India. Others say the fact that we were able to enter a coalition government in 1940, coming out again in 1945 without loss.
Now, about India, I think many historians feel that this was your greatest achievement. But do you now think it was a pity to allow India to be divided?
I'm sorry. I thought it would be much better if they joined together in a unitary government, or if not, something like a federation.
Do you think anything can be done now to bring them closer
Well,
together?
I think it may. They will only settle this wretched Kashmiri problem.
I think that the independence, your move in giving India independence, began the process of creating the new Commonwealth.
I think it is really a foundation of a multiracial Commonwealth.
Are you satisfied with the way the Commonwealth's gone? Do you think it's going too fast?
Oh, I think so, yes.
Well, actually, I think you were the Prime Minister who decided that Britain should have her own atomic bomb.
I did at that time, yes.
Do you think we should still have an independent deterrent?
No, I don't think it's necessary now. At the time, you remember, the hydrogen bomb had not been discovered. It was only what they call the atomic bomb at that time, and Russia hadn't got it. And the important thing in my mind was that the thing was bound up also with the industrial use, and we hadn't got that owing to the Quebec Agreement. We had to go ahead on our own that one.
But do you think that we can have an independent foreign policy without an independent deterrent?
I think so, yes. There's no such thing as independence today in the world. We're all too closely united. The old days of splendid isolation and national defence have gone.
What do you think about the government's new Polaris deal?
Doesn't sound too good to me. A long way ahead. What will happen by 1970, I don't know.
Well, Attlee, you said there's no such thing as independence today, but I think you are against us going into the common market.
I am, yes.
Why is that?
Well, that's a very limited alliance, purely European, and it really, I think, breaks the unity of the Commonwealth. In my mind, the Commonwealth is immensely important, just because it is multiracial, Asiatic and African, Australian and American. And I think that's a great step to go back to a purely European Union. Mind you, I'm all for the closest relations. It's quite another thing to submit entirely to what I consider would be very largely a dictatorship of civil servants.
Well, Attlee, you were at the founding meeting of the United Nations. How do you feel that the UN has developed?
Well, it's developed to some extent, not as far as it ought to have. And was partly due to the fact that very soon after its formation, the Russians took their own line, and you got the Cold War. Secondly, looking back now, although it was impossible at the time, the essential for a real United Nations is some degree of surrender of sovereignty, particularly on war and peace and armaments. We couldn't effect that at the time. I'm hoping we yet develop on that line.
Are you concerned that such a large proportion of the United Nations now comes from the Afro-Asian bloc?
I don't mind that, but I think you've got to have a reorganization of the United Nations to give proper weight not only to population, but to status.
Now, can I take you on to home politics, Lord Attlee? In an article about you in a Sunday newspaper, it suggested that you were the only leader the Labour Party has had which has been able to keep it together, to hold it together. Do you think this is true?
Oh, I think someone else might have done it quite as well.
Why do you think that the Labour Party has only had a majority in the House of Commons for 6 years out of half a century?
Oh, for various reasons, I don't know. There's a certain amount of disunity, unfortunately. A pity we didn't hold together a bit more closely.
Do you think the Labour Party has sometimes been too slow to change its ideas?
Possibly.
It's often suggested nowadays that Parliament, the role of Parliament is declining. Do you think in the 40 years since you first became an MP this has been true?
I don't think so. The only thing is it doesn't get the publicity as it used to. That doesn't apply when it's a Parliament. When I was young, you know, the Parliament and the law courts had great publicity. Now, of course, they have the competition of your television MP and all the people on the wireless and so forth. And actually that makes a difference.
It is.
Just the same way as in old days, a political meeting in a town or village was a pretty big show. Well, now it's been rather overridden by the wireless.
Do you think we should have television in the House of Commons?
Oh no. I think they're entirely spoil the particularly intimate atmosphere of the House of Commons.
One suggestion that's being very much canvassed at the moment is that there should be a committee of defence, or a few people from all parties, rather like the American committees in Congress. Would you think this was a good idea?
I don't think it will work over here. You see, the American Congress is so different. I mean, after all, they have a separate executive divided from the legislature. Now with us, there have been times, of course, when the Committee on Imperial Defence was running, and I think Balfour will remember when the Liberals were in. I was invited to be so once, but at that time there were very deep divisions on policy. Now maybe if you had a united policy you would do this. The trouble is, you set up these kind of organizations, you tend to take away from the House of Commons its position as a forum of discussion, because your leading members might feel themselves tied.
Can you say which of the many politicians and world statesmen that you met have most impressed you?
Well, statesman.
Content.
Roosevelt, perhaps?
Have you ever met Kennedy?
Oh, yes.
How do you think he compares with Roosevelt?
Well, he's young, but he's coming on nicely.
Lord Attlee, can I ask you finally, if you found yourself suddenly Prime Minister again, what do you think would be the most urgent problems facing you?
Peace.
And at home?
Full employment and full production.
Lord Attlee, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that people of all parties would want to wish you many happy returns of the day.
Thank you very much indeed. You're very kind.